The great chamber was silent. 12 species had gathered in the ancient station that orbited the dead star of Villar. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and they had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Counselor Breath stood at the center of the room. He was a Krellin, an insectoid being with 4 arms and eyes that saw in every direction. His voice clicked and hummed as he spoke, and the translation devices carried his words to every ear in the chamber. "We have watched the humans for 200 years, Breath said. "We have studied them. We have measured them. And now, we must act." He waved one of his arms, and a hologram appeared in the air. It showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth, the homeworld of humanity. "They developed fire," Breath continued. "Then tools. Then cities. Then machines. Then they split the atom. Then they reached their moon. Then they reached their neighboring planets. And then, in just 200 years, they built ships that travel faster than light." The council members shifted in their seats. They had all seen the reports. They knew what Breath was saying. "No species has ever advanced this fast," Breath said. "The Morthans took 800 years to develop faster than light travel. The Vel took 1,000. We Krellins took 600. But the humans did it in 2 centuries. Counselor Wymeth of the Vel spoke next. She was a crystalline being, her body made of living stone that glowed with inner light. Her voice was like wind through broken glass. "Speed alone is not a threat," Wymeth said. "They are more than clever," Breath replied. "They are dangerous." He changed the hologram. Now it showed human colony ships spreading across the stars. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of stations, millions of people, moving outward in every direction. "They breed fast," Breath said. "They adapt to any environment. They build communities on frozen moons and burning deserts. They form bonds with other species instead of conquering them. They are unpredictable, emotional, and creative in ways we cannot understand." "You make them sound admirable," said Counselor Trell of the Morthans. He floated in a tank of water, his tentacles waving gently. "Perhaps they would make good allies." "They would make terrible allies," Breath said, "because they would soon become our rulers." The chamber went quiet again. Breath let the silence hang in the air before he continued. "I have run the calculations," he said. "At their current rate of expansion, humans will outnumber all other species in the galaxy within 500 years. Their technology will surpass ours within 300, and their culture will absorb ours within 200. "Absorb?" Wymeth asked. "They do not conquer through war," Breath explained. "They conquer through contact. Every species that meets them begins to change. They adopt human music, human art, human ideas. They start to think like humans. They start to want what humans want." "That is not conquest," Trell said. "That is influence." "It is extinction," Breath said. "Slow extinction. Gentle extinction. But extinction all the same." He changed the hologram one final time. Now it showed the Galactic Council itself, but the seats were different. Human faces sat where alien beings had been. Human voices spoke where ancient languages had ruled. "This is our future," Breath said, "unless we act now." The debate that followed lasted 7 cycles. Some council members argued for integration. They said that humanity could be taught, guided, controlled. They said that the council had managed dangerous species before. Others argued for quarantine. They said that humanity could be contained within their current territory. They said that borders could be enforced. Trade could be restricted. Contact could be limited. But the majority reached a darker conclusion. "We have seen this before," Wymeth said on the 5th cycle. "Species that grow too fast. Species that spread too wide. Species that threaten the balance of the galaxy. We have dealt with them in the past. We must deal with the humans now." "What are you proposing?" Trell asked. though he already knew the answer. The stellar catalyst, Wymoth said. The chamber went silent. The stellar catalyst was an ancient weapon, created by the Council's founders. It caused stars to collapse, destroying everything within 2 light-years. It had been used before, though the records were sealed. No one spoke of those times. We would kill 18 billion people, Trell said. We would save the galaxy, Breath replied. The vote took place on the 7th cycle. Each of the 12 species cast their decision. When the count was finished, Ymeth spoke the result. 9 in favor, 3 against. The motion passes. Breath felt a weight lift from his body. It was done. The humans would be destroyed, and the galaxy would be safe. We must act quickly, he said, before they spread beyond containment. I propose we deploy the catalyst in 30 standard cycles. 30 cycles? Trell said. 30 cycles is already too long, Breath said. Every day we wait. More human ships launch. More colonies are founded. More humans are born. We must strike, while we can still end them completely. The Council agreed. 30 cycles. Then, the human star would die, and humanity would die with it. Far away, on the blue planet called Earth, Park Yuna stood on the balcony of her apartment in the city of Seoul. She was 32 years old. An engineer who had spent her life building colony ships. She loved her work. She loved the idea that her ships would carry people to new worlds, new homes, new futures. The night sky was clear, and she could see the stars. And now, as an adult, she was helping to make those dreams real for millions of others. She did not know that 12 alien species had just voted to end her world. She did not know that a weapon was being prepared to destroy her son. She did not know that she had 30 cycles to live. She only knew that the stars were beautiful, and that tomorrow she would go to work and build another ship, and that somewhere out there, humans were spreading across the galaxy, reaching for something greater than themselves. She smiled at the sky and went inside to sleep. The Council believed they had time. They were wrong. Kim Tae-ho was not supposed to be listening to deep space frequencies. He was a communications officer on the orbital station called Horizon, and his job was simple. He coordinated supply ships. He tracked cargo. He made sure that food and medicine and equipment reached the right places at the right times. But Tae-ho had always been curious. Too curious, his supervisor said. He asked too many questions. He looked at things he was not supposed to look at. He listened to signals he was not supposed to hear. That was how he found the message. It came on a frequency that humans had never used. It was encrypted in a language that humans had never seen. But Tae-ho recognized the mathematics beneath it. All languages were built on mathematics, and mathematics was universal. He ran the signal through every translation program the station had. Most of them failed. But one of them, an old program designed for first contact situations, found a pattern. It pulled the pattern apart and rebuilt it into something Tae-ho could understand. The message decoded into 3 words. Extinction protocol initiated. Tae-ho stared at the screen for a long time. His hands were shaking. His heart was beating fast. He told himself that he had made a mistake. He told himself that the translation was wrong. He told himself that this could not be real. But he knew it was real. He could feel it in his bones. He reported his findings to Station Commander Lee Ji-won. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served in 3 interstellar conflicts. She had seen things that would break most people, but she was not broken. She was steady, like a rock in a storm. She listened to Tae-ho without interrupting. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "You are certain?" she asked. "The coordinates point to Seoul," Tae-ho said. "Our sun. The timeline is 29 cycles." Ji-won looked at the data on her screen. She looked at the translation. She looked at the frequency analysis. Then she looked at Tae-ho. "You did well," she said. Now we must act. Within hours, the message had reached Earth. It went to the United Defense Council, the organization that coordinated all of humanity's military and emergency forces. It went to every government, every space agency, every research station in human territory. It went everywhere. The reaction was chaos. Some people denied it. They said the message was fake. They said it was a trick, a test, a mistake. They said that no one would try to destroy an entire species for no reason. Others demanded verification. They wanted proof. They wanted to see the weapon, to track its origin, to confirm that the threat was real. They wanted more time to study the situation. A few called for immediate military response. They wanted to find the Council's station and destroy it. They wanted to show these aliens that humanity would not be killed without a fight. But there was one person who understood what the message really meant. Dr. Cho Mirai was humanity's leading expert on alien civilizations. She had spent her entire career studying the ruins of dead species. She had walked through empty cities on silent worlds. She had read the records of peoples who had vanished without explanation. She had always wondered what had happened to them. Now she knew. They have done this before, she told the emergency assembly. The Council does not negotiate. They do not warn. They do not give second chances. They simply erase. The assembly went quiet. Mirai was not a person who spoke without evidence. If she said this, she had reason to say it. I have studied 17 dead civilizations, she continued. All of them reached a certain level of development. All of them began to expand across the stars, and all of them disappeared at the same moment in their history. No wars, no plagues, no natural disasters. They simply stopped existing. You are saying the Council killed them all? Someone asked. I am saying that someone did, Mirai replied. And now that someone is coming for us. The debate that followed was brief. Humanity had ships, but not enough to fight 12 spacefaring empires. They had weapons, but nothing that could challenge civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had 29 cycles. Commander Jiwan stood before the assembly. She had come down from the Horizon Station to speak in person. Her voice was calm, but her words were heavy. We cannot fight them, she said. We do not have the strength. We cannot hide from them. They will find us, eventually. We cannot negotiate with them. They have already made their decision. She paused. The room was silent. But we can do what humans have always done when faced with extinction, she said. We can adapt. We can survive. We can run. She pulled up a display that showed hundreds of schematics. Colony ships, transport vessels, cargo carriers, every ship that humanity had ever built for long-distance travel. We have 412 ships capable of interstellar flight, Jiwan said. We have 29 cycles to load them, launch them, and scatter them across the galaxy. We cannot save everyone, but we can save enough. Enough for what? Someone asked. Jiwan looked at the assembly with steady eyes. Enough to start again. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not fight. Humanity would not hide. Humanity would leave. In Seoul, Park Yuna received her orders the next morning. She was to report to the orbital shipyard immediately. Her skills were needed. Her colony ships were needed. Everything she had built in her life was needed. She packed a small bag and took one last look at her apartment. She would never see it again. She knew that. But she did not cry. There was no time for crying. There was only time for work. The exodus had begun. The next 18 cycles saw the greatest effort in human history. Every factory on Earth worked day and night. Every shipyard in orbit pushed beyond its limits. Every person with hands to work or a mind to think was called to serve. They were building an ark. Not one ark, but hundreds. Ships that would carry humanity away from their dying sun, away from their ancient home, away from everything they had ever known. In the orbital shipyard above Earth, Park Yuna worked without rest. She had designed colony ships for years, but she had never built them this fast. There was no time for testing. There was no time for perfection. There was only time for completion. "This wiring is not optimal," her assistant said, pointing at a panel. "Is it functional?" Yuna asked. "Yes, but..." "Then leave it. Move to the next section." She hated working this way. She was an engineer. She believed in precision, in quality, in doing things right. But doing things right took time. And time was the one thing they did not have. Across the shipyard, Chief Engineer Kang Junho faced a different problem. He was responsible for converting cargo ships into passenger vessels. These ships were designed to carry food and equipment, not people. They had no beds, no kitchens, no medical bays. They had nothing that humans needed to survive a long journey. But Junho was creative. He stripped out weapons and shields and anything else that added weight. He installed simple sleeping pods, basic food systems, recycled air filters. The ships would not be comfortable. They would not be pleasant. But they would keep people alive. "We need the defensive systems," a military commander argued. "What if we are attacked? Then we die," Junho said. "But if we keep the defensive systems, we cannot fit enough people on board. And then we die anyway. Speed is survival. Every kilogram we save is another life." The commander did not like it, but he could not argue with the math. On Earth, a woman named Baek Suman faced the hardest task of all. She was a librarian, a quiet person who had spent her life surrounded by books and records and knowledge. Now she was responsible for deciding what humanity would take with them and what they would leave behind. She could not take everything. There was not enough space. So, she had to choose. She chose genetic samples from every plant and animal on Earth. She chose seeds that could grow food on alien worlds. She chose medical knowledge and engineering blueprints and scientific research. She chose music and art and literature, the things that made humans more than just survivors. But she also had to leave things behind. Ancient buildings that could not be moved. Forests and oceans that could not be packed into ships. Graves of loved ones that could not be dug up and carried away. She cried when she made her lists. But she made them anyway. The hardest decisions were about people. 18 billion humans lived in the solar system. The ships could carry 11 billion. Maybe 12 if they packed tight and hoped for the best. That meant 6 or 7 billion would have to stay behind. Who would go? Who would stay? Some volunteered to remain. The elderly, who said they had lived their lives. The sick, who knew they would not survive the journey. Those who could not bear to leave their homes, who would rather die on Earth than live on some distant rock. Young Heyoon was 90 years old. She had grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they all begged her to come with them. But she refused. "I was born on this world," she told her granddaughter. "I will die on this world. Take my seat on the ship. Take it and live." Her granddaughter cried and held her hands and promised to name a star after her. Heyoon smiled and said, "That would be nice." Others fought for passage. There were riots in some cities, as people pushed and shoved and screamed for a place on the ships. There was violence, theft, betrayal. The worst parts of humanity came out in those dark days. But so did the best parts. Communities organized themselves. They made lists and held votes and decided together who would go. They prioritized children and young adults, people who could build new lives on new worlds. They prioritized doctors and engineers and farmers, people with skills that would be needed. They prioritized pregnant women and nursing mothers, people who carried the next generation. It was not fair. It could not be fair. There was no fair way to decide who would live and who would die. But they did their best, and their best was better than chaos. Dr. Cho Mireille chose to stay behind. "Someone has to watch," she said when Commander Jiwon asked her to board a ship. "Someone has to record what happens. Someone has to send that information to the fleet, so they know what they are facing. You will die, Jiwan said. I know. You could study alien civilizations from a new world. You could continue your work. Mireille shook her head. My work has always been about understanding death. Now, I will understand it completely. Jiwan did not argue. She knew that some people had made their peace, and it was not her place to take that peace away. On the 19th cycle, the first wave of ships launched. Yuna stood at the window of the shipyard and watched them go. Hundreds of vessels, rising from orbit, turning toward the darkness between stars. Each one carried thousands of people, all of them leaving behind everything they had ever known. She thought about her parents, who had refused to leave their farm. She thought about her friends, scattered across different ships, heading to different destinations. She thought about Earth, the blue planet that had given birth to her species, now fading behind her. Then she wiped her eyes and went back to work. There were more ships to finish. By the 25th cycle, the evacuation was nearly complete. 11 billion. 300 million people had launched. The ships scattered in every direction, heading toward the darkest, most distant regions of space. Places the Council had never explored. Places where humanity might hide, and rebuild, and survive. Commander Jiwan stayed until the end. Her ship, the Horizon, would be the last to leave. She would make sure everyone got out. How many remain? She asked Tejo on the 29th cycle. 7 billion on Earth. Another 2 billion across the solar system. 9 billion people, waiting to die. Jiwan closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them again. Launch the remaining ships, she said. All of them. Now. We are not fully loaded. Launch them. Every second counts. The final ships rose from Earth and the Moon and Mars and the orbital stations. They were not full. They were not ready. But they were leaving. And that was all that mattered. Jiwan watched them go. Then she turned her ship toward the darkness and followed. Behind her, Earth waited in silence. The button had not been pushed yet, but it would be soon. On the 30th cycle, Counselor Breath of the Krellans activated the stellar catalyst. He stood in the control chamber of the Council station, surrounded by representatives from all 12 species. The room was quiet. Some felt regret. Most felt only relief. The threat was being ended. The galaxy was being saved. Breath placed his 4 hands on the control panel and entered the activation sequence. The system hummed to life. Lights blinked. Screens displayed data. The ancient weapon, created 10,000 years ago by the founders of the Council, began to power up. Activation confirmed, a computer voice announced. Stellar catalyst deployed. Estimated time to target. 6 cycles. 6 cycles. Then the weapon would reach the human sun. It would create a gravitational disruption, a tiny change in the balance of forces that held the star together. And then the sun would collapse, falling inward on itself, crushing everything in its core until it exploded outward again, consuming every planet, every moon, every station within 2 light years. It would be quick. The humans would not suffer. One moment they would exist, and the next moment they would not. That was some comfort, at least. It is done. Counselor Wimeth of the Vel said. The human threat is ended. The council members nodded and murmured their agreement. Some of them left the chamber immediately, eager to return to their normal duties. Others stayed to watch the data screens, tracking the weapon as it traveled toward its target. Breath stayed. He wanted to see this through to the end. 6 cycles passed. The weapon reached Sol. It activated, sending invisible waves of gravitational force into the heart of the star. The sun shivered. Its surface bulged and rippled. Its corona flared with sudden heat. And then, nothing. The sun stabilized. The disruption faded. The collapse did not happen. Breath stared at the screens in confusion. What went wrong? He demanded. The weapon did not work. His technicians checked the data. They ran diagnostics. They analyzed every signal and measurement. The weapon worked perfectly, one of them reported. The gravitational disruption was exactly as designed. Then why is the sun still there? Because it was not enough. Breath turned to face the technician. Sol is larger than we calculated, the technician said. Denser. More stable. The disruption was not strong enough to trigger a collapse. The star absorbed the force and recovered. Breath felt a cold anger building in his chest. Then we deploy a second weapon. A stronger one. That will take time to prepare. Cycles, perhaps tens of cycles. Then begin immediately. But before he could give the order, another technician interrupted. She was staring at her screen with a strange expression on her face. Counselor, she said, you need to see this. Breath walked to her station and looked at the display. It showed Earth, the human homeworld, captured by long-range sensors. The planet was intact. The sun had not destroyed it, but something was wrong. Where are the life signs? Breath asked. There are none. That is impossible. 18 billion humans lived on that planet. They are gone, the technician said. The planet is empty. Breath ordered a full scan of the entire solar system. It took 3 cycles to complete. The results were the same everywhere. Earth was empty. The moon bases were dark. The Mars colonies were abandoned. The orbital stations were drifting without power or crew. They evacuated, Breath said. He could barely believe it. They evacuated the entire solar system. The council erupted into chaos. How was this possible? The humans had only possessed interstellar travel for 200 years. They did not have enough ships. They did not have enough time. They could not have moved 18 billion people in 30 cycles. But they had. Counselor Trell of the Morthans demanded an explanation. Our intelligence said they could not escape, he said. Our calculations said they would not see us coming. How did they know? How did they prepare? Breath reviewed the communications data. It took him only a few hours to find the answer. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had intercepted the Council's signal. They had decoded the message. They had understood what was coming, and then they had done the impossible. They had built ships. They had loaded people. They had launched everything they had in every direction, scattering across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. Where did they go? Yimith asked. Everywhere, Breath said. Nowhere. We cannot track them all. They went in 400 different directions. Then we follow them. We find them. We finish what we started. But even as she spoke, Breath knew it would not be that simple. Space was vast. The galaxy was enormous. Finding 400 ships that did not want to be found would take years, decades, maybe centuries. The humans had escaped. 3 cycles later, the Council received a transmission. It came from Earth, from a location near the ruins of a city called Sol. The signal was weak and scratchy, but the voice was clear. It was Dr. Cho Mirei. She had stayed behind to send a final message. I am recording this for the beings who tried to kill my people, she said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. You thought you were faster than us. You thought you were smarter than us. You thought you could end us before we even knew we were in danger. She paused. In the background, alarms were sounding. The station she was in was losing power, losing air, losing everything that kept her alive. You were wrong, she continued. We knew. We prepared. We left. And now we are out there. Somewhere in the darkness. Building new homes on new worlds. You will never find all of us. You will never kill all of us. And one day, when you have forgotten about us, we will remember you. The transmission ended with 3 words. You were too slow. Breath stared at the screen for a long time after the message ended. Around him, the other council members were silent. The triumph they had expected was gone. In its place was something else, something uncomfortable. Doubt. We will find them, Yimeth said finally. It will take time, but we will find them. Breath nodded. He had to believe that. He had to believe that the Council was still in control. That the humans were still just a problem to be solved. That the galaxy was still safe. But deep in his mind, in a place he did not want to look, he knew the truth. They had pressed the button too late. The humans were gone. And somewhere out there, they were waiting. The Council searched for humanity for 200 years. They sent scout ships to every corner of the galaxy. They scanned every star system, every planet, every moon. They followed the trails of the human colony ships, tracking their engine signatures, analyzing their trajectories, predicting their destinations. They found abandoned colonies on dozens of worlds. The humans had landed there, built temporary shelters, stayed for a few months or a few years, and then left again. They took everything useful with them. They left nothing behind except empty buildings and cold fire pits. They found derelict ships drifting in empty space. Decoys. The humans had sent empty vessels in random directions to confuse pursuit. Some of them carried recordings that played when the Council ships approached. Messages from humans who were already far away, laughing at those who had come to find them. They found signals, broadcasts from human transmitters, bouncing off asteroids and nebulae, leading the Council ships on endless chases that went nowhere. But they never found the humans themselves. Counselor Breath lived long enough to see the first century of the search. He grew old and slow, his once sharp mind dulled by time and frustration. He spent his final years in his private chambers, reviewing reports that all said the same thing. No contact, no sighting. How? He asked his chief analyst, a young Krellin named Veth. How do 11 billion beings simply disappear? Veth had studied humans for decades. She had read their literature, listened to their music, analyzed their history. She understood them better than any other member of the Council, perhaps better than any Krellin had ever understood any alien species. They adapted, she said. They found worlds we considered unlivable. Frozen moons with no atmosphere. Rocky planets blasted by radiation. Gas giants where nothing should survive. They built underground. They built in the darkness. They built where we would never think to look. Breath stared at her. His eyes were cloudy now, his vision failing. You admire them, he said. I fear them, Veth replied. We tried to destroy them, and they survived. We tried to find them, and they hid. We tried to forget them, and they remained. Every year that passes, they grow stronger. They learn more. They build more. And we know nothing about what they are building. They are refugees, Breath said, scattered, broken. They will fade away in time. But he did not believe his own words. And when he died, 3 cycles later, his final thought was of Dr. Cho Mire's message. Another century passed. Counselor Weymouth of the Vel led the search now. She was patient and methodical, and she believed that time was on the Council's side. The humans could not hide forever. Eventually they would make a mistake. Eventually they would reveal themselves. But they did not make mistakes. Instead, strange things began to happen at the edges of Council space. Ships disappeared without explanation. Stations lost contact, and were found empty when rescue teams arrived. Signals were detected and then vanished before they could be traced. The Council told itself that these were natural phenomena, accidents, equipment failures. There was no evidence that the humans were responsible, but there was also no evidence that they were not. Veth, now old herself, presented her final report to the Council. She had spent her entire life studying the human threat, and she had reached a conclusion. They are coming back, she said. The Council chamber went silent. Ymeth leaned forward in her seat. Explain. Humans do not forget, Veth said. It is not in their nature. They remember their enemies. They remember their wounds. They pass their memories from generation to generation, parent to child, teacher to student. The humans who fled Earth are dead now. But their children are alive. And their children's children. And all of them know what we did. They would not be foolish enough to attack us, Ymeth said. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They do not need to attack us, Veth said. They only need to wait. They are patient. They are growing. And one day, when they are ready, they will come. Not as victims, as something else. She did not say what that something else would be. She did not need to. Far away, in a region of space that the Council had never explored, a young woman named Li Unji stood on the bridge of a ship called the New Dawn. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Commander Li Jiwan, who had led the evacuation fleet 200 years ago. She had grown up on stories of Earth, of the Council, of the genocide that had been attempted against her people. She had trained her whole life for this moment. Around her, 300 ships waited in formation. They were not colony ships. They were not transports. They were warships, built in secret over generations, armed with weapons that the Council had never seen. Her first officer was a man named Shin Dong-yun. His family had been among the last to leave Earth. They had lived in Seoul, in the same city where Park Yuna and Dr. Cho Mirei had once worked. He carried their memories with him, as all humans carried the memories of those who came before. All ships report ready, he said. Weapons charged, shields active, drives at full power. Yunji nodded. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the bright center of the galaxy, the Council sat in their ancient station, believing they were safe, believing they had won, believing that the humans were gone forever. They were wrong. My great-great-grandmother saved our people, Yunji said. She gave us a chance to survive. But survival was never the goal. It was only the beginning. She turned to face her crew. They were young, all of them, born on worlds that their ancestors had built from nothing. They had never seen Earth. They had never breathed its air or walked on its ground. But they knew what it meant. They knew what had been taken from them. The Council pressed the button too late, Yunji said. They thought they could end us before we began. But we began a long time ago. We began when the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. We began when the first human built a fire and refused to die in the darkness. We began when the first human said no to extinction and yes to tomorrow. She paused. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of the engines. Now it is our turn, she said. Not to destroy them as they tried to destroy us, but to show them what they failed to understand. Humanity does not break. Humanity does not fade. Humanity does not forget. She gave the order. 300 ships engaged their drives and vanished into the void. They were heading toward the light of civilizations that had once tried to extinguish them. They were heading toward a future that the Council had never imagined. They were heading home, and this time, they would not be running.